In this presentation, we want to take a look at bank rules where we have one vendor that we're paying, but we want two different expense accounts to be affected depending on the circumstances of paying that vendor. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We're going to go down to the reports first. Let's be opening up the reports. Let's try to just open the P&L this time, the profit and loss. See if we can get away with that. Just one report this time. Go back up top. We're going to be changing the dates from 05, 0120 to 063020. And then I'm going to run that report. I'm going to duplicate that report up top by right-clicking on the tab up top and duplicating it. Back to the tab to the left, go into the banking information where we have our bank feed data. And we're going to be creating rules here once again. So I'm going to duplicate this tab as well. So we'll have the rules to the right and then the data to the left. So I'm going to duplicate this information. And then I'm going to go back to the information on the left, close up the old hamburger, and scroll down to the area of the rules of where we want to set. Where do we want? Oh, here's where this is where we want to have a rule down here. So we have the Primerica life insurance, you'll see, and then the Primerica California 01. So it's both going to Primerica. And Primerica, we're going to say, is like an investment institution. And as a business, let's assume that the Primerica is having, this is going to be like an employee benefit of some kind, possibly. So let's say for whatever reason, we want the Primerica here to be going into the employee benefit expense account. So we want this to be going to employee benefit, but we would like to be breaking out the amount that Primerica is coming out from Primerica with regards to the life insurance and put them into a different account. So again, if we were just to basically let the system pick up these items, it would probably just be calling it Primerica, and that's all we would have to go by. But considering we have the life insurance here and the ACE and the 01, the California 01 and all that, that's enough for us to break out a rule. That's something we can play with. That's something that we can be more specific about if we want to break out a nice rule with regards to it. So remember, whenever you do these, and I haven't mentioned this every time, you want to have that and make sure that you're showing the bank detail. So you have all the information you can in order to make a rule like this. You want to have all the detail in there so that you can use that detail in order to help you with the rule setting process. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the second tab where I'm going to set the rule. So I'm going to go to the rules on the second tab up top here as well. I'm going to close up the hamburger. I'm going to make a new rule. We want a new rule. And the first one I'm going to call Primerica Life. So hopefully I spelled it right. If you don't spell it right, then it doesn't pick it up. And I've done that a couple times. Quite a lot, actually. But in any case. So it's going to be the bank text. It's going to be the contains. It's going to be containing. Then I just copy this one. That reduces the likelihood of spelling it wrong multiple times. Then you have the expense down here. So it's going to contain that text. And notice I include, of course, the life insurance here. Then it's going to be an expense item. The payee. Now, you could just keep the payee as Primerica, or you can break it out and say, I want this to be Primerica Life versus the Primerica California or whatever the other is going to be. Oftentimes, it's nice to have those separate vendors because it makes it easier to break out your payments, by vendor to the actual category. But you don't need to here. You could just be calling this one Primerica, and that's it, right? And then applying it out to the two categories. So I could add that. I want to add that as a vendor, save it here. And this is going to be the life insurance. So I'm going to add employee benefits, life insurance, employee benefits, but I want to put this and break it out to life insurance. And so when you think about this, this is another kind of area where you might say that you might want an employee benefits account and then break out the life insurance possibly as a sub account of it, and then list out the employee benefits that are there. That's one way you might want to think of it. I'm just going to break out the life insurance and then the other just to show our difference here. So it's going to be an expense type of account. I'm not going to get into too much detail on the other expense accounts. I'm just going to say basically other expense here. So I just put it into other expense. It's going to be employee benefits life insurance. So then I'm going to just say save and close. And I'm going to have it, I would still want to review it. So I'm going to take a look, keep it at the default there and save that item. Let's go back to our first tab and see what happens, refreshing that screen. Now we would expect it to be picking up the life insurance items from Primerica and not the other. So that did what we would expect. It's going to the payee. Notice the payee is the same. throughout all of them, but only the Primerica for the life insurance has the rule here applied to it. If we had set that up a different way, it obviously would have taken all the Primerica and we would have had to apply it to the one account. So we need that rule to break it out between the two. Now let's set the rule for the other ones, and I'm just going to put this into employee benefits just to be able to break them out. So I'm going to go back to the first tab, and I'm going to say, all right, let's set up another rule. This time we want it to be for Primerica, and then I'm going to call it CA01 because that's kind of the name that's that's on the bank feeds. It's going to be money going out. It's going to contain the text of Primerica CA01. Notice in the bank feeds it's all capitalized, and here I'm not capitalizing, and so the caps aren't something that's going to negate the rule. That's not something. So the fact that they're lowercase here and they're capital on the bank feeds doesn't negate the rule here. So we got the expenses. It's going to be an expense. The payee, again, I'm going to choose the same payee, which is going to be Primerica. Now you could make it Primerica and change the vendor name to CA01 to have different vendors, or you can use the same vendor and just simply use the rules to be categorizing out between the two of them. So then we're going to say that this is going to be the category of let's call this just employee benefits. So I'm going to put this in employee instead of the life insurance, employee benefits life insurance, and that's it. So it should apply that out. Let's go ahead and hit save. See if it then picks up the other Primericas, going back to the first tab, refreshing the screen. And then I'm going to close up the old hamburger. I'm going to scroll back down and see if it picked up the other Primericas. It didn't. So Primerica is California 01. So it's possibly a spelling error. So let's go and see if I can take a look at why. So I'm going to go back to the rules and scroll back down, and we have Primerica California 01. So let's edit that item. And if you want to completely test the spelling, I'll actually just copy it. So I'll go back over here and say, well, what would happen if it's a spelling thing? What if I just copied it directly? And this will bring the caps over as well. And then I'll paste it here for the name. And this is where this is what we really need to be correct right there. And then everything else should be the same. So I'm going to say, let's save that and then go back over and refresh this and see if it then picks it up. So there we have it. Now it's picking it up, and it's going to a different, they both look like they're going to employee benefits, but one was employee benefits life insurance and the other's different. So let's go ahead and add these. So I'm going to select the first one, hold down shift, and select the last one. I'm going to go to the batch actions up top, and we're just going to accept the selected. Then I'm going to go back to the far tab to our P&L. Let's refresh the P&L. Close up the old hamburger, hold down control, scroll up just a bit to that 125. And then we're going to go down and we should have employee benefits and employee benefits life insurance. So you can see it's breaking out between the two. Here's the items that are going into the employee benefits. And if we go back then and look at the life insurance, here's the items going into the life insurance. So that's one way we could split that out, save some time in the future. Let's go back to our bank detail, hold down control, get it back down to 100% so the QuickBooks doesn't do anything funny. And then if we go back down, the other one that we want to take a look at in a similar setting, similar situation is the phone bill. So let's say we have the phone bill with Verizon, and let's say for some reason we have basically different areas of the phone bill. So different regions possibly. Maybe we want to set up the phone bill for this office versus another office, or this state versus another state. If we were to do that, then possibly within the phone bill, we might have some different information like different numbers in the information that may be indicating different bills, different accounts, or different locations. So in that case, we could use those numbers to apply. So let's say these numbers then apply to different regions. Then we can apply out and say, okay, I'd like to have two different phone expense accounts that are going to these two different regions. So let's go back over to our rules and say, all right, let's say we add another rule here. And we're going to say this is for Verizon. And actually, I'm going to close this back out, and I'm going to go back to the banking. And let's go to the rules on the second tab, as generally has been our custom. So I'm going to go to the second tab and then add the rule. And then I'm going to go through this. Now, I want to go over here and simply copy it this time. So I might want to copy it and say, let's copy this whole thing for this item first. I'm gonna just highlight it. It won't let me do it. It won't let me hide it. And copy it. And then I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to put this in the rule name. And money out, that's good. It's going to be text containing. I'm going to put that whole piece in the text that's going to contain. The key thing is the number here that we want. And then down below, we could, again, break out different vendors based on these different rules, these different locations. So I could put that as a vendor, or we can just keep the vendor as just Verizon. It kind of depends how you want the vendor reports to be setting up, right? When I look at the vendor reports and I look at the payments by vendor, do I want them breaking out by region? Or would I rather have all just see all payments that are going to that particular vendor? And if I want it broken out by region, I can create a new vendor based on the region that I'm in. So then we have the category, and the category is going to be telephone, but I'm going to say telephone location 1. And so I'm going to set up another telephone expense, and I'm going to select the drop down, and I'll just put it into like utilities. So it's an expense, utilities. It's going to be telephone location 1. Now, if you have different areas that you want to break out, then you may want to have a subcategory of basically telephone expense and then a subcategory by region. And then this could also be helpful for you to use a class tracking feature if you wanted to. And then you can basically run a P&L by different class as well, instead of having broken out just by the accounts. But with the bank feeds, the accounts are useful because that'll help you to apply class tracking if that's something you're interested in. In any case, we're going to say save that. So there we have that, and I'm going to say let's apply that out. And then if I go back to our rule, then it applied out the rule. If I refresh it, let's refresh here. So note down here, it applied the rule to this one, which went to the telephone expense by a location. And then these other two are items that QuickBooks is basically picking up based on prior transactions. So what I want to do is I'd rather have these not be picked up without a rule by just QuickBooks picking them up, but I'd like to set a rule for them. So I'm going to set up a rule for this one, which is going to be to location 2. So I'm going to put that for location 2. So I'm going to go back up to the rules up top, and I'm going to say, let's make a new rule. And this is going to be, I'm going to copy the name again. I'll just copy the whole thing. So I'm going to highlight this, and then it didn't keep the copy thing. Highlight that and copy. Back over here, I want that here. It's going to be a text rule. This is the actual rule. It's going to contain that text. And then we're going to have the vendor. I'm going to keep it to just Verizon. Same. Verizon is the same vendor. Category this time is going to be the telephone. But this I want to have location 2, right? This is going to be the telephone expense for location 2. So I'm setting up a new expense account for another telephone expense account. I'm going to make it a utilities account. So the expense account, utilities, telephone. Again, you might want to make this a sub account if you wanted to do this kind of method with telephone as the parent and then these two locations as the sub accounts of it. I'm going to save that and then save this and see if it then applies out the rule. So let's go back to our banking. Let's then refresh the screen, close up the hamburger and scroll on down. And so now we have the rule applied to these two. And then the system is trying to apply a rule here. So these two are going correctly to location 1 and location 2. Now let's do the catch-all rule if it doesn't have one of those numbers. So the catch-all rule is going to be a Verizon catch rule. So it's going to be everything else. So I'm going to go back to our rules over here. And what's going to happen when we're done with this is going to change not to just green, but have the actual rule that we can adjust within it. So I'm going to go back over. It's going to have kind of like the same effect though. And then I'm going to say new. And we're going to say this is going to be Verizon. You could like the catch rule or something like that. And for here, I'm just going to say that I want Verizon in it. That's all I need to find to apply this rule. This is going to be the broader rule. We're going to apply the restricted rules, the more strict rules above it, and this will catch everything else. So I'm going to say the text rule is there, and then this is going to be going to Verizon once again, Verizon. And the category now is just going to be the telephone. Just general telephone expense, not location 1 or 2. This is catching all other telephone areas, so possibly the admin office or something like that, you know. And so I'm going to say, all right, let's save that and then go back to the first tab. And what's going to happen when we refresh, this one is going to lose that it's going to have the rule thing in front of it, we would think. Let's check it out. So now if I scroll back down, so there it is. Now it's setting a rule. This one's just going to the telephone expense. So that notice the rule gives us a little bit more control because unlike it just being green, you know, QuickBooks just saying, hey, look, I found a trend here if we have a rule that we can actually go back here and adjust it and make it more defined if we need to. Now, notice that this last rule, again, we use that hierarchy type of thing. For example, if this Verizon was up top above these two, it would apply this rule first, and these two rules then would not be applied. So we have the more stringent rules up top, and then it's going to apply those first. It's going to apply this rule, and then this rule, and then this rule. Therefore, the more stringent rules, and then the general rule, which will catch everything else, needs to be underneath in the ordering. All right, so then if we go back to the first tab, let's go ahead and add those. I'm going to click the first one, hold down Shift, click the last one. We're going to go to the batch actions. Let's accept those selected items and see if it does what we would expect on the financial statements, the P and L, the profit and loss. Let's refresh the financial statement. Close up the hamburger, hold down Control, scroll up just a bit to that 125, where we like to be there. Now we have the 3 telephone places now, right? So we have the telephone location or telephone with no location, picking up the general item that had the Verizon in it, scrolling back up, and then if we go to the location 1, we have it being applied out to location 1, the item for location 1 here, and then obviously location 2, the item that was in location 2. So you can see it's basically automatically splitting out those rules. So as you do rules like this, I would set these rules up and let them run, check them for a month or two, right, before you fully trust them, and then you can even automate them so that they happen automatically and just pull right over into your financial statements if they're all working properly.